October 5, 2019, when Taliban fighters stormed the medical compound in Kandahar province. They expected to find an easy target, one female Navy medic protecting wounded SEALs who couldn't fight back. What they didn't know was that Petty Officer Second-Class Maya Hartwell had just watched her patients, men she'd kept alive through impossible odds, get dragged into captivity. And she was about to make a decision that would turn her from a healer into the deadliest person in that valley. How does a 27-year-old combat medic with no elite combat training take down 50 armed insurgents and walk out alive? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. October 5, 2019, when Taliban fighters stormed the medical compound in Kandahar province. They expected to find an easy target, one female Navy medic protecting wounded SEALs who couldn't fight back. What they didn't know was that Petty Officer Second-Class Maya Hartwell had just watched her patients, men she'd kept alive through impossible odds, get dragged into captivity. And she was about to make a decision that would turn her from a healer into the deadliest person in that valley. How does a 27-year-old combat medic with no elite combat training take down 50 armed insurgents and walk out alive? The morning started like any other at Forward Operating Base Crimson in Afghanistan's Kandahar province. Maya Hartwell was inventorying medical supplies in the makeshift clinic when the radio crackled with urgent chatter. A SEAL team had taken heavy contact during a village clearance operation 12 kilometers northeast. They had casualties, serious ones. Maya's hands moved on autopilot, prepping trauma kits and coordinating with the Quick Reaction Force. She'd been deployed for 7 months. And this wasn't her first emergency extraction. But something felt different today. The radio traffic was chaotic, fragmented. Words like ambush and surrounded kept breaking through the static. 20 minutes later, 2 Blackhawks touched down in a storm of dust and rotor wash. The crew chiefs were already pulling casualties before the skids hit the ground. Maya counted 5 SEALs being rushed toward her clinic, all with varying degrees of trauma. The team leader, Lieutenant Commander Derek Vaughn, had taken shrapnel to his leg and shoulder. His second-in-command was unconscious with a suspected traumatic brain injury. The other 3 had gunshot wounds ranging from moderate to severe. "We got hit from 3 sides," Vaughn grunted as Maya cut away his uniform. "Lost comes with 2 of our guys. They're still out there." Maya worked without pause, her training overriding the adrenaline flooding her system. She'd joined the Navy to help people, not to see them broken like this. But there was no time for emotion. Stop the bleeding. Stabilize the airway. Keep them alive long enough for the surgeons at Bagram to work their magic. The base commander, Colonel Patricia Reeves, appeared in the doorway of the clinic. Her face was stone. "Hartwell, we've got a situation developing. Intel indicates a large insurgent force moving toward our position. We're evacuating non-essential personnel within the hour." "These men can't be moved yet, ma'am," Maya said, not looking up from the chest tube she was placing. 2 of them won't survive transport for at least 6 hours. Reeves hesitated. "Then you'll stay with them until they're stable enough. We're leaving as skeleton security, Detail 8 Marines. The rest of the base is pulling out." Maya nodded, her jaw tight. 6 hours. She could keep them alive for 6 hours, but 6 hours turned into 8, then 10. The insurgent force that Intel had warned about wasn't just moving toward the base. They were systematically cutting off every route in and out. Helicopters couldn't risk the flight through the mountain passes with that many RPGs in play. The Marines reinforced the perimeter, but everyone knew the truth. They were trapped. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn drifted in and out of consciousness, fighting the morphine Maya had given him. "You need to get yourself out of here, Doc," he mumbled during one of his lucid moments. "When they breach those walls, it's going to get ugly fast." "Not leaving," Maya said simply, checking his vitals. You're stuck with me. The first mortar hit at 2,147 hours. Maya was changing bandages when the explosion rocked the compound, sending medical equipment crashing to the floor. She threw herself over the nearest patient, young SEAL named Corporal James Brennan, who'd taken 2 rounds to the abdomen. The lights flickered, but held. "Contact, east wall." Someone screamed outside. Gunfire erupted. The distinctive crack of AK-47s, mixing with the deeper thump of American rifles. Maya could hear the Marines calling out targets, their voices tense but controlled. She moved between her patients, rechecking IVs and wounds, making sure none of them were bleeding out from the sudden movement. Another explosion, closer this time. The building shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're probing our defenses." A Marine sergeant yelled, backing into the clinic doorway. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat. "Ma'am, you need to arm yourself. If they get through, you'll need more than bandages." Maya glanced at the rifle locker in the corner. She'd qualified on the M4 during basic training, but that felt like a lifetime ago. Her hands were made for surgery, not firefights. The battle intensified over the next hour. Maya could track its progress by sound alone, the gunfire getting closer, the Marines' shouts becoming more urgent. She prepared syringes of morphine, ready to ease suffering if the worst happened. But she also checked the magazine in the M4 she'd finally retrieved from the locker. 30 rounds. 1 rifle. 5 patients who couldn't defend themselves. At 0014 hours. Everything changed. The explosion that tore through the east wall wasn't a mortar. It was a vehicle-borne IED, a suicide bomber who'd driven a truck packed with explosives straight into the compound's weakest point. The blast wave knocked Maya off her feet and killed 3 Marines instantly. Her ears rang as she pulled herself up. Through the smoke and dust, she could see figures pouring through the breach, dozens of them, their silhouettes backlit by fires burning across the compound. The Marines were fighting hard, but they were outnumbered 5-1. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Listen to me," he rasped. "They'll take us for intel. You understand? They'll take us alive if they can." His eyes were clear now, focused. "Don't let that happen, Doc, to any of us." Maya understood what he was asking. Her hand instinctively went to the pistol on her hip, the one she'd never imagined using. But before she could respond, the door to the clinic burst open. Not Marines. Not friendly forces. 3 insurgents rushed in, their weapons raised. They were shouting in Pashto, gesturing at the wounded SEALs. One of them spotted Maya and smiled, not friendly, but predatory. This was the moment. The moment when everything she'd been trained to do as a healer collided with a reality no one had prepared her for. The lead insurgent stepped toward Lieutenant Commander Vaughn. Reaching for him, Maya's hand moved to her rifle. Maya's rifle came up in one fluid motion. Muscle memory overriding the screaming voice in her head that said she was a medic, not a killer. The M4's stock found her shoulder. Her finger found the trigger. The lead insurgent's smile disappeared as 3 rounds punched through his chest at center mass. He dropped. Like a puppet with cut strings, the other 2 fighters froze for a half second, just long enough for Maya to pivot and fire again. The second man caught 2 rounds in the throat before he could bring his AK to bear. The third fighter got his weapon up, but his burst went wide, stitching holes across the ceiling as Maya's shots found his sternum. 3 men down in less than 4 seconds. Maya's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the adrenaline dump that came with crossing a line she'd never imagined crossing. She just killed 3 people. 3 human beings who moments ago had been breathing, thinking, living. "Good shooting, Doc." Lieutenant Commander Vaughn's voice cut through her shock. "But we've got about 50 more coming through that breach. You need to move, now." The sound of boots pounding outside snapped her back to reality. Vaughn was right. the clinic would be overrun in minutes. But she couldn't leave her patients. These men had families, futures, people waiting for them to come home. She'd kept them alive through surgeries performed with shaking hands under mortar fire. She wasn't about to let them be executed or dragged off to some cave to be used as propaganda. "Can any of you move?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. Corporal Brennan tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back, his face gray with pain. The others were worse off unconscious or too weak from blood loss to even speak. These men needed ICU beds and surgical teams, not a running firefight. "Go," Vaughn said. "Get yourself out. We're already dead if they—" "Shut up, sir." Maya cut him off, her mind racing through impossible calculations. The clinic had 2 exits, the main door where the insurgents had just entered, and a back door that led to the supply depot. The depot connected to a maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the compound to the vehicle bay. It was a last resort evacuation route, designed for scenarios exactly like this. But could she get 5 immobile patients through that tunnel? Not a chance. Not alone. Not with an enemy force swarming the compound. More voices outside, shouting commands in Pashto. Maya could hear them organizing, preparing for a coordinated sweep of every building. She had maybe 2 minutes before this room, filled with hostile fighters. She made her decision. "I'm going to draw them away," Maya said, checking her rifle. 30 rounds minus the 9 she'd just used. 21 left. She grabbed 2 more magazines from one of the dead insurgents. "When they follow me, you stay quiet. Play dead if you have to." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "That's suicide," Vaughn protested, trying to rise on his ruined leg. "Doc, that's a goddamn suicide run." "Maybe." Maya moved to the back door, pausing to look at her patients one last time. "But I didn't keep you alive this long just to watch them drag you off. So stay here, stay quiet, and stay alive." "That's an order." She slipped out the back door before Vaughn could argue further. The supply depot was chaos. Boxes of medical supplies and ammunition had been thrown everywhere by the earlier explosions. A small fire burned in the corner, throwing wild shadows across the walls. Maya moved through it quickly, her boots crunching on broken glass and spent shell casings. The maintenance tunnel entrance was hidden, behind a false wall panel. She pulled it open and stared into the darkness beyond. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for one person to move through at a crouch. It would take her underneath the compound and come out near the vehicle bay, assuming the vehicle bay wasn't already crawling with insurgents, but she wasn't running. Not yet. Maya emerged from the tunnel access into the vehicle bay and immediately understood the magnitude of what she was facing. Through the bay's open doors, she could see the compound lit by fires and muzzle flashes. Insurgents were everywhere, moving in groups, clearing buildings, executing any wounded Marines they found. She counted at least 30 fighters in her immediate line of sight, with more pouring through the breach in the east wall. The Marines' final stand had been at the communications building. She could see their bodies now, clustered around the entrance they'd defended to the last. 8 Marines, all dead. The men who'd stayed behind to protect her patients, to give her time. Something cold and hard settled in Maya's chest. Not rage was hot and impulsive. This was something different. This was the absolute clarity that came from having nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. She studied the compound's layout with new eyes. The vehicle bay where she stood overlooked the entire western section of the base. The elevated position gave her a tactical advantage. She could see them, but the fires and shadows would make her harder to spot. There were 3 Humvees parked in the bay, all with mounted weapons. The closest one had an M240 machine gun. Maya had never fired an M240 outside of basic qualifications. But she understood the principle. Point the gun at the bad guys and pull the trigger. She climbed into the Humvee's turret, her hands finding the machine gun's grips. The weapon was already loaded. The Marines had prepared for a last stand that never came. The belt of ammunition snaked down into an ammo can mounted on the vehicle's interior. Probably 200 rounds, maybe more. Through the turret's observation port, she watched the insurgents moving through the compound. They were organized, professional even. This wasn't a ragtag militia. This was a trained fighting force executing a coordinated assault. They moved in teams, covering each other, clearing buildings with practiced efficiency. They were also heading toward the clinic. A group of about 10 fighters was making its way across the compound, weapons ready, clearly planning to secure the building where they knew wounded Americans were trapped. Maya swung the M240 toward them and squeezed the trigger. The machine gun roared to life, its muzzle flash lighting up the bay like a strobe light. The sustained burst caught the lead insurgents in the open, cutting them down before they could react. The rest scattered, diving for cover behind whatever they could find: concrete barriers, destroyed vehicles, piles of rubble. She just announced her position to every hostile fighter in the compound. Smart? No. Necessary? Absolutely. The insurgents' attention swung away from the clinic toward the vehicle bay. Muzzle flashes erupted from a dozen positions as they returned fire. Rounds sparked off the Humvee's armored hull and whined through the air around Maya's head. She ducked down, her heart hammering, then popped back up to send another burst downrange. 2 more fighters dropped. The rest pulled back, seeking better cover. Maya's tactical radio crackled to life. She'd forgotten she was even wearing it. Unknown friendly, this is Falcon 6. The voice was calm, professional, speaking over the chaos of background noise. We have your position marked. Be advised, we're tracking approximately 45 enemy fighters in your compound. QRF is wheels up, but won't reach you for another 25 minutes. Can you maintain your position? 25 minutes. Maya almost laughed. She had maybe 200 rounds of ammunition and was facing down an organized enemy force that outnumbered her 45-1. Maintaining her position wasn't just unlikely, it was mathematically impossible. Falcon 6, this is Petty Officer Hartwell. I have 5 critically wounded SEALs in the medical clinic. Grid November Delta Force 728. They cannot be moved and cannot defend themselves. I will maintain my position until QRF arrives, or I am no longer combat effective. How to copy? There was a pause. Then, solid copy, Hartwell. We're pushing everything we have toward you. Stay alive. Working on it, Maya muttered, swinging the M240 toward a group of insurgents trying to flank her position from the south. She fired in controlled bursts now, conserving ammunition. Each burst sent fighters scrambling for new cover or dropped them entirely. But for every man she hit, 2 more seemed to appear. They were adapting to her, spreading out, using the compound's buildings and debris to approach from multiple angles. A rocket-propelled grenade screamed past the Humvee, missing by inches before detonating against the wall behind her. The explosion showered her with concrete chips and made her ears ring all over again. They were trying to take out her position with heavy weapons, smart, and if they succeeded, nothing would stop them from storming the clinic and capturing the wounded SEALs. Maya abandoned the Humvee, rolling out of the turret just as another RPG slammed into the vehicle's side. The explosion flipped the Humvee onto its side and sent her tumbling across the bay floor. Her rifle went skittering away into the shadows. She lay there for a moment, stunned, her body screaming in pain. Blood ran down her face from a gash across her forehead. Her left arm wasn't responding correctly, probably dislocated from the fall. Get up. Get up. Get up. Maya forced herself to her feet, grabbed her rifle with her good hand, and stumbled deeper into the vehicle bay. The insurgents would be coming now, moving in to confirm their kill. She had seconds, maybe. The second Humvee sat abandoned 15 feet away. It also had a mounted weapon, not a machine gun this time, but a Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher. 40mm grenades. Fully automatic. Effective range of 1,500 meters. Maya had never fired a Mark 19 in her life. But she was about to learn. She hauled herself into the turret one-handed, biting back a scream as her injured arm protested. The weapon's controls were simpler than she'd feared, essentially a large trigger and a charging handle. The ammunition belt was already loaded, each grenade clearly visible in the feed mechanism. Insurgents were flooding into the vehicle bay now, thinking they had her. At least 15 fighters, weapons raised. Moving in a loose skirmish line, Maya grabbed the Mark 19's trigger with her good hand and fired. The launcher chugged to life, sending grenades downrange at a rate of 1 per second. Each 40mm projectile traveled in a low arc before detonating with devastating effect. The first 3 rounds landed in the middle of the advancing insurgents, the explosions ripping through their formation. The next burst caught the fighters trying to retreat, cutting off their escape in 10 seconds. Maya had eliminated nearly every hostile in the vehicle bay, but the weapon's muzzle flash had also pinpointed her exact location for every other insurgent in the compound. And they were coming, all of them. Maya abandoned the Mark 19 as tracer rounds started converging on her position from 3 different directions. The insurgents had learned. They weren't bunching up anymore, weren't giving her easy targets. They were using fire and maneuver tactics, one group suppressing while another advanced. Professional, disciplined, deadly. She dropped from the Humvee and sprinted toward the maintenance tunnel entrance, her dislocated shoulder sending lightning bolts of agony through her body with every movement. Behind her, the vehicle bay erupted in a concentrated barrage of gunfire. The Humvee she'd just abandoned disappeared in a cloud of sparking metal and shredded rubber. The tunnel entrance was still open, her one stroke of luck in the last 5 minutes. Maya threw herself through the opening and slammed the access panel shut behind her, plunging herself into absolute darkness. She could hear boots pounding on concrete outside, voices shouting in Pashto, the sounds of a coordinated search. Her tactical radio crackled again. Hartwell, Falcon 6. We're showing multiple heat signatures converging on the vehicle bay. What's your status? Maya keyed her radio, keeping her voice to a harsh whisper. I'm mobile. Moving through maintenance tunnels. How long until QRF? 18 minutes. Can you stay hidden that long? 18 minutes. Maya felt along the tunnel wall in the darkness, her good hand finding the rough concrete. The tunnel stretched for approximately 300 meters, connecting various points of the compound's infrastructure. It was designed for utility access and emergency evacuation, not for playing hide-and-seek with 40 armed insurgents. I'll try, she whispered. But they know I'm down here. It's only a matter of time before they find the tunnel entrances. Understood. We're monitoring. If you can reach the compound's north wall, there's a drainage culvert that leads outside the perimeter. Too small for an adult to fit through, but I might be able to squeeze through, Maya finished. She knew the culvert, had seen it during her initial tour of the base. It was designed to prevent flooding during the rainy season, nothing more. The opening was maybe 18 inches in diameter. Even if she could fit through it with her injured shoulder, she'd be abandoning her patients, the 5 SEALs in the clinic, the men she'd sworn to protect. Negative, Falcon 6. I'm not leaving without my patients. There was a long pause. Then, Hartwell, the advised satellite imagery shows insurgents entering the medical clinic. I repeat, hostiles are in the clinic now. Maya's blood turned to ice. No. She'd drawn them away. The fighters were supposed to be chasing her. Not a burst of gunfire echoed through her radio, faint but unmistakable. Then voices, harsh commands in Pashto, and the sounds of a struggle. They're taking prisoners, the voice on the radio confirmed. We count 5 individuals being removed from the clinic building. All appear to be casualties on stretchers. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn, Corporal Brennan, the other 3 SEALs whose names Maya had memorized from their medical charts, being dragged out of the compound. Being taken. Maya knew what happened to captured American service members in Taliban custody. The torture, the propaganda videos. The executions were staged for maximum media impact. If those men disappeared into the Afghan mountains, they'd never be seen alive again. She checked her rifle. 1 magazine left. 30 rounds. Her pistol, a Sig Sauer M11, had 2 magazines of 15 rounds each. Total ammunition, 60 rounds. To face an enemy force of 40-plus fighters, the smart play was to escape through the drainage culvert. Save herself. Let the professionals handle the hostage rescue. She was a medic, not a one-woman army. She'd already done more than anyone could have expected. But Maya wasn't thinking about the smart play anymore. She was thinking about Corporal Brennan, who'd shown her pictures of his 2-year-old daughter before they'd gone into surgery. About Lieutenant Commander Vaughn, who'd ordered her to save herself even as insurgents were dragging him away. About the 8 Marines who'd died protecting her, and her patients. She was thinking about the line between being a healer and being a protector, and how that line had blurred the moment she'd pulled the trigger on her rifle. Maya started moving through the tunnel. Not toward the drainage culvert, but toward the compound's eastern section. Toward where the prisoners would be taken. The tunnel branched at several points, splitting off to various utility access points throughout the base. Maya's mental map of the compound, whose good 7 months of deployment had familiarized her with every building, every corridor, every tactical position. The insurgents would likely take their prisoners to the breach in the east, while the same opening they'd used to assault the compound. It was their main avenue of approach and retreat. She found a ladder leading to a utility hatch that opened near the compound's fuel depot, maybe 60 meters from the east wall breach. Maya climbed one-handed, her injured arm tucked against her body, each rung sending fresh waves of pain through her shoulder. The hatch opened with a rusty squeal that sounded deafening in the darkness. Maya froze, listening. Nothing. She pushed the hatch fully open and emerged. Into the fuel depot, a cluster of large storage tanks and pumping equipment surrounded by concrete blast barriers. Through gaps in the barriers, she could see the east wall breach. The scene there made her stomach clench. The insurgents had organized a hasty extraction point, complete with several pickup trucks and what looked like a captured Humvee. Fighters were loading equipment, ammunition, and their stretchers with wounded Americans strapped down. Maya counted her patients. All 5, still alive, still moving. Vaughn was conscious, his head turning as he surveyed his surroundings, probably planning an escape that his wounded body would never be able to execute. 20 insurgents guarded the extraction point. Another 10 were scattered around the perimeter, maintaining security. 30 hostiles between Maya and her patients. And she had 60 rounds of ammunition. The mathematics of combat were brutally simple. She needed approximately 2 rounds per target to guarantee a kill. 60 rounds meant 30 targets, maximum. And that assumed perfect accuracy, no wasted shots, no suppressive fire needed. In reality, she'd be lucky to drop 15 fighters before her ammunition ran out. But she didn't need to kill them all. She just needed to create enough chaos to disrupt the extraction. If she could delay them for 80 minutes, no, check that. 15 minutes now. The QRF would arrive with overwhelming firepower. Helicopters, gunships, an entire quick reaction force designed for exactly this. Scenario, 15 minutes. Maya just had to keep her patients in the compound for 15 more minutes. She studied the fuel depot's layout with tactical eyes. 6 large fuel tanks, each containing thousands of gallons of diesel and aviation fuel. The pumping station. The network of pipes connecting everything together. all of it protected by blast barriers designed to contain explosions and prevent fuel fires from spreading. An idea formed, terrible, desperate, absolutely insane. Maya moved to the nearest fuel tank and found its drainage valve. She opened it, and diesel began pouring onto the ground, spreading across the concrete in a dark, oily pool. She moved to the next tank, then the next, opening valves and creating an interconnected web of fuel that stretched from the depot toward the east wall breach. The insurgents were so focused on their extraction that they didn't notice the fuel creeping toward them. Why would they? The depot was 60 meters away, hidden behind blast barriers. Seemingly irrelevant to their operation. Maya pulled a road flare from her tactical vest, standard emergency equipment that she'd never thought she'd use as a weapon. She struck it, and it burst to life with a brilliant red flame. "Falcon 6 Hartwell," she whispered into her radio. "I'm about to do something really stupid. Tell QRF to approach from the west side of the compound. The east side is about to get very hot. Hartwell, clarify your..." Maya tossed the flare into the pool of diesel fuel. The ignition wasn't the Hollywood explosion she'd half expected. Instead, the fuel caught with a soft humph, and flames began racing across the ground, following the trails of diesel she'd created. Within seconds, a wall of fire was advancing toward the east wall breach like a living thing, growing larger and hotter as it consumed more fuel. The insurgents saw it coming and panicked. Men scattered, shouting warnings, abandoning their positions as the fire roared toward them. The flames reached the first pickup truck and engulfed it. Someone had left ammunition in the truck bed. Maya could hear rounds cooking off in the heat, bullets firing randomly as their propellant ignited. In the chaos, the guards around the stretchers broke formation. Some ran from the flames. Others tried to move the prisoners away from the fire. The organized extraction had dissolved into panicked confusion. Maya emerged from behind the blast barriers with her rifle up. She moved along the perimeter of the fire, using it as cover, targeting any insurgent who tried to establish control. 3-round bursts, center mass, exactly as she'd been taught. Her first shots dropped 2 fighters who were trying to drag Lieutenant Commander Vaughn's stretcher toward safety. Her next burst caught a fighter who'd raised his rifle toward the fleeing prisoners. The insurgents returned fire, but they were shooting blind through smoke and flames. Most of their rounds went wide, sparking off concrete or disappearing into the darkness. Maya kept moving, kept firing, staying mobile. A moving target was harder to hit than a stationary one. Her rifle's bolt locked back on an empty magazine. She dropped it, transitioned to her pistol, and kept shooting. The M11 kicked harder than the rifle, but at close range, it was just as deadly. 2 more insurgents down. Then 3 more. She was operating on pure adrenaline now, her body running on autopilot while her conscious mind focused on target acquisition and threat assessment. Pain from her dislocated shoulder had become white noise, background static that she simply ignored. A fighter emerged from the smoke directly in front of her, his AK-47 rising. Maya shot him twice in the chest before he could fire. Another appeared to her left, and she pivoted, putting 3 rounds into him before he could bring his weapon to bear. Her pistol's slide locked back. Empty magazine. She dropped it, loaded her last magazine, and chambered around. 15 shots left. Total. Through the smoke and flames, Maya could see her patients. The stretchers had been abandoned in the chaos, the insurgents too busy fighting or fleeing to maintain control of their prisoners. Vaughn was conscious, his hand raised as if trying to signal her, telling her to stay back, to save herself. Maya ran toward them instead, crossing through a gap in the flames that singed her uniform and made her skin blister from the heat. She reached Vaughn's stretcher first and started pulling it away from the extraction point, back toward the compound's interior. "Doc, what the hell are you doing?" Vaughn's voice was weak but angry. "You're going to get yourself killed." Probably, Maya grunted, dragging his stretcher with her good arm while her pistol stayed in her injured hand, ready to fire. But I'm taking you with me. She grabbed Brennan's stretcher next, using a one-point drag technique she'd learned in training. It was agonizingly slow. She could move maybe 10 meters before having to stop and check their surroundings. But it was a movement. It was progress. An insurgent appeared through the smoke, shouting in Pashto, his weapon aimed at Maya's head. She couldn't bring her pistol up in time. She was off balance. Pulling the stretchers, her injured arm barely functional. The shot never came. Instead, the insurgent jerked and fell, 3 rounds stitching across his chest from a different angle entirely. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn had somehow gotten his hands on a fallen insurgent's rifle. He was firing from his stretcher, his face twisted in pain and determination, providing cover for Maya as she dragged him and Brennan to safety. "Keep moving, Doc," he shouted, working the rifle's action. "I've got your back." Maya pulled harder, faster, getting the 2 stretchers behind a concrete barrier. 3 more patients to go. She ran back into the chaos, pistol up, looking for threats through the smoke. The fire had spread to the fuel depot now, and the heat was becoming unbearable. One of the tanks exploded with a roar that shook the ground, sending a mushroom cloud of flame hundreds of feet into the air. The blast wave knocked Maya off her feet and sent insurgents tumbling like bowling pins. She got up, kept moving, reached the 3rd stretcher and started dragging. Her tactical radio came alive. "Hartwell, Falcon 6. QRF is 1 minute out. We have birds in the air with thermal imaging. Stay clear of the east wall. We're coming in hot." 1 minute. Maya just had to survive 1 more minute. She reached the 4th stretcher, muscles screaming, lungs burning from smoke inhalation. The SEAL strapped to it was unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. She dragged him back toward the barrier where Vaughn was still providing covering fire. 1 patient left. Maya turned back toward the flames, toward the extraction point where the 5th and final stretcher lay abandoned. That's when she saw him. The Taliban commander stood on the far side of the fire, his stretcher in his hands. He'd grabbed the last patient, a young SEAL named Petty Officer Travis Keller, and was dragging him toward a truck that had survived the flames. His eyes met Maya's across the burning compound. He smiled. Not the predatory smile from before. This was different. This was the smile of someone who knew they'd won. He had a hostage. He had leverage. He had Maya raised her pistol and fired. The range was too far for accurate pistol fire. Her first shot missed. Her second shot hit the stretcher's frame. Her third, the commander dropped, clutching his leg. The stretcher fell from his hands. Maya ran. Not around the fire, through it. The flames licked at her uniform, her skin, her hair. She felt rather than heard the flesh of her exposed arms blistering from the heat. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. She burst through the far side of the fire, grabbed Keller's stretcher, and started dragging him back. The wounded commander was trying to crawl toward her, his rifle forgotten, his face a mask of pain and rage. Maya didn't shoot him again. She just kept dragging Keller toward safety, 1 agonizing step at a time. The distinctive thump of helicopter rotors filled the air. Apache gunships were coming in low and fast, their FLIR targeting systems painting every insurgent in the compound. The 30mm chain guns opened up, and the remaining Taliban fighters were either cut down or fled into the night. Maya collapsed behind the concrete barrier. All 5 stretchers now safe, all 5 patients accounted for. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, part shock, part respect, part something else entirely. "How many?" he asked quietly. Maya didn't understand at first. "How many? How many did you kill tonight?" She tried to count. The 3 in the clinic. The group she'd hit with the M240, the Mark 19's devastating salvos. The individual fighters she'd shot during the extraction. She couldn't get an accurate number. It was all a blur of muzzle flashes and falling bodies. "I don't know," she admitted. "Does it matter?" Vaughn shook his head slowly. 50, give or take. Falcon 6 was counting on thermal. 50. Maya had eliminated 50 enemy fighters. She looked down at her hands, the hands she'd trained to save lives. Now covered in burns and blood and gunpowder residue from the lives she'd taken. The QRF Blackhawks were landing now. Medics rushing out with fresh stretchers and trauma equipment. Someone was shouting her name, telling her to sit down, telling her she needed immediate medical attention for her burns and her dislocated shoulder, but Maya wasn't ready to sit down yet. She watched as each of her 5 patients was loaded onto the helicopters, watched as they were lifted away toward safety, toward the surgical teams at Bagram who would continue the fight to keep them alive, only. When the last helicopter disappeared into the night sky, did Maya finally allow herself to collapse. Maya woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. The first thing she noticed was that her left arm was in a sling, properly immobilized after surgery to repair her dislocated shoulder. The second thing she noticed was the array of 4 lines running into her other arm: antibiotics, pain medication, fluids to combat the dehydration from severe burns. The third thing she noticed was Lieutenant Commander Derek Vaughn sitting in a wheelchair beside her bed. "You're supposed to be in Bagram," Maya croaked, her throat raw from smoke inhalation. "I was. Got medevaced here at the same time as you." Vaughn's leg was in a cast from hip to ankle, and his shoulder was bandaged heavily, but he was alive, alert. "Figured I'd check on the woman who saved my life. Multiple times, if we're counting." Maya tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in her body felt like it had been put through a meat grinder. "The others?" "Brennan's in surgery right now, 3rd one since we got here, but the docs say he'll make it. Keller lost his spleen, but he's stable. Martinez and Chen are both conscious and complaining about the food, which the medical staff says is a good sign." Vaughn's expression softened. "Because of you, Doc, every single one of us made it out because you refused to leave." The memories came flooding back. The fire, the stretchers, the impossible mathematics of 60 rounds against 40 fighters. The feeling of her skin blistering as she ran through flames to reach Travis Keller. "I killed 50 people," Maya said quietly, staring at her bandaged hands. Vaughn was silent for a moment. 50 enemy combatants who were trying to execute or capture American service members. "There's a difference, is there?" Maya looked at him. "I'm a medic. I took an oath to do no harm. And in one night, I killed more people than most infantry soldiers do in an entire deployment. You also saved 5 lives that would have been lost otherwise. Saved 8 Marines from being overrun. Their sacrifice bought you time, but you're the one who made that time count. You disrupted an enemy operation, destroyed their command and control, and held a position against overwhelming odds until reinforcements arrived." Vaughn leaned forward in his wheelchair. "The Navy doesn't give medals to killers, Petty Officer Hartwell. But they do give them to heroes." Before Maya could respond, the door opened and a Navy captain in dress blues entered, followed by a full bird colonel. From the Marine Corps, both officers had enough ribbons on their chests to suggest they'd seen more combat than most people could imagine. "Petty Officer Hartwell," the captain said. "I'm Captain Michael Richardson, Naval Special Warfare Command. This is Colonel Sandra Hayes, Marine Corps Forces Special Operations Command. We need to debrief you on the events at Phobe Crimson." The debriefing lasted 4 hours. Maya recounted everything she could remember: the initial casualties, the siege, her decision to stay with her patients, the series of defensive positions she'd held, the fuel depot fire, the final extraction. The officers took notes, asked clarifying questions, occasionally exchanged glances that Maya couldn't interpret. When she finished, Captain Richardson leaned back in his chair. "Petty Officer Hartwell, what you did was either the bravest or the most reckless thing I've heard in 30 years of military service. I haven't decided which yet. Permission to speak freely, sir?" Maya asked. "Granted. I wasn't trying to be brave or reckless. I was trying to keep my patients alive. That's my job." Colonel Hayes smiled slightly. "Most medics accomplish that job without eliminating an entire enemy assault force. The tactical decisions you made, using the elevated position in the vehicle bay, the fuel depot fire, the mobile defense during the extraction, where did you learn those techniques?" "I didn't, ma'am. I just adapted, used what was available. You demonstrated combat awareness and tactical innovation that we try to train into our special operations personnel over years of intensive instruction," Richardson said. "And you did it instinctively, under extreme duress, with minimal combat training. That's remarkable." Maya didn't feel remarkable. She felt exhausted, in pain, and increasingly uncertain about what came next. "What happens now, sir?" The two officers exchanged another glance. Hayes spoke first. "That depends on several factors. The incident at FOB Crimson is being classified at a very high level. Taliban propaganda is claiming they successfully raided an American base and killed dozens of troops. We're not correcting that narrative publicly because it serves our intelligence purposes to let them think their operation was more successful than it actually was. Which means," Richardson continued, "that what you did, the specifics of how you held that compound and saved those SEALs, won't be common knowledge. We can't risk the enemy understanding our defensive capabilities or tactical responses." Maya absorbed this. "So no one will know what happened." "The people who matter will know," Hayes said firmly. "Your chain of command knows. The SEALs you saved know. The families of those 8 Marines who died defending the compound know that their sacrifice wasn't in vain because someone was there to make it count." Richardson pulled a folder from his briefcase. "We're recommending you for the Navy Cross, second highest decoration for valor in combat. The approval process will take time, and the ceremony will be closed door due to classification, but your service record will reflect it." The Navy Cross. Maya had seen exactly one of those in person worn by a SEAL instructor during her advanced trauma training. The man had lost both legs earning it during a firefight in Iraq, had still managed to save 3 wounded teammates before evacuation arrived. "I don't deserve that, sir," Maya said quietly. "I was just doing my job." "Your job was to provide medical care," Vaughn interjected from his wheelchair. "You went about 15 steps beyond that, Doc." Richardson nodded. "Lieutenant Commander Vaughn is correct. However, there's another matter we need to discuss. Your psychological evaluation." Maya's stomach tightened. She'd known this was coming. You don't kill 50 people in one night without someone wanting to examine your mental state afterward. "Standard protocol after any combat incident of this magnitude," Hayes explained, her tone gentler now. "Especially for personnel who aren't primarily combat specialties. We need to ensure you're processing what happened in a healthy way. And if I'm not, then we get you help. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. The Navy takes care of its own, Petty Officer Hartwell. Always." The psychological evaluation began the next day. A Navy psychiatrist named Commander Lisa Torres sat across from Maya in a private consultation room. Her expression neutral and professional. "Tell me about the first person you killed," Torres said. Maya closed her eyes, remembering. 3 insurgents burst into the clinic. They were going for Lieutenant Commander Vaughn. I didn't think. I just raised my rifle and fired. Center mass, 3-round burst, exactly like they taught us in basic. How did you feel afterward?" "Shocked. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe I'd actually done it." Maya opened her eyes. but I didn't have time to process it. There were more coming, and my patients couldn't defend themselves. And the subsequent kills? How did those feel? Maya thought carefully before answering. Different. After the first 3, it became ... tactical. I wasn't thinking about them as people anymore. They were threats. Problems to solve. X number of hostiles in Y position, requiring Z amount of firepower to neutralize. You compartmentalized, Torres noted. I guess so. Is that bad? It's a survival mechanism. Common in high-stress combat situations. Torres made a note on her tablet. But now you're out of that situation. The immediate threat is gone. How are you processing it now? That was the harder question. Maya stared at her bandaged hands that had sutured wounds and administered medications and held dying Marines as they took their last breaths. Hands that had also pulled triggers and launched grenades and killed with clinical efficiency. I dream about them, she admitted. Not nightmares exactly, just ... moments. Faces in the smoke. Bodies falling. The smell of burning fuel and cordite. I wake up and for a second, I think I'm still there, still fighting. That's normal. Post-traumatic stress. Given what you experienced, it would be more concerning if you weren't having those reactions. Torres leaned forward slightly. Maya, can I call you Maya? Yes, ma'am. Maya, what you did wasn't murder. It was combat. Legal, justified, necessary combat to protect yourself and your patients. But I understand that intellectually knowing that and emotionally accepting it are two different things. I became a medic to save lives, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to be the person who put people back together, not the person who tears them apart. And now you're both, Torres finished. And reconciling those two identities is going to take time. But here's what I want you to understand. Being a healer doesn't mean being a pacifist. Sometimes protecting life requires taking life. That doesn't make you a killer. It makes you someone who was willing to do something impossibly hard to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. What if I can't go back to being just a medic? What if I can't look at patients without seeing targets? What if I've broken something in myself that can't be fixed? Torres reached across and gently touched Maya's uninjured hand. Then we'll work through it together. However long it takes. The Navy has excellent trauma counseling programs, peer support groups, long-term therapy options. You don't have to carry this alone. The door opened and a nurse poked her head in. Commander Torres? Sorry to interrupt, but Petty Officer Hartwell has visitors. They say it's important. Torres looked at Maya. Do you feel up to visitors? Maya nodded, wiping her eyes with her good hand. Yeah, who is it? The nurse smiled. All 5 of them. They came in one at a time. Vaughn, in his wheelchair, Brennan on crutches, Keller with a drainage tube still visible under his hospital gown, Martinez and Chun both limping but mobile. 5 SEALs who by all rights should have been dead or in Taliban custody, now crowded into Maya's hospital room, looking uncomfortable and determined. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn spoke first. Doc, we wanted to come thank you properly. Not just for saving our lives, but for refusing to give up on us even when the smart play was to save yourself. Corporal Brennan held out a small package wrapped in plain paper. We got you something. Well, Vaughn got it. We all signed it though. Maya unwrapped the package with her good hand. Inside was a Navy SEAL trident, the distinctive gold pin that marked someone as a qualified special warfare operator. But this one was different. It had been mounted on a plaque, and underneath were 5 signatures along with an inscription. To HM2 Meyer Hartwell, Honorary, SEAL, earned through courage under fire and refusal to leave teammates behind. FOB Crimson, October 15, 2019. Brothers and sisters in arms forever. Maya stared at it, her vision blurring with tears she could no longer hold back. The SEAL Trident wasn't something given lightly. Men spent years training to earn the right to wear it. And here were 5 of the most elite warriors in the world, telling her she'd earned that same right in a single night. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Vaughn replied. "We just wanted you to know that what you did mattered. Not just to us, but to our families, our teammates, everyone who cares about us. You gave us a future we wouldn't have had otherwise." Keller stepped forward, moving carefully around his medical equipment. "My daughter was born 2 months ago. I got to meet her because of you. Got to hold her, see her smile, be her dad. That's everything, Doc. That's literally everything." Brennan nodded. "My little girl, I told you about her, remember? She's 3 now. I'm going to get to see her grow up, teach her to ride a bike, walk her down the aisle someday. Because you wouldn't quit." One by one, each SEAL shared what Maya's actions had given back to them. Marriages that wouldn't end in widows' benefits. Children who would grow up with fathers. Dreams and plans and futures that had been snatched from the edge of oblivion by one medic who refused to accept the impossible odds. The Navy Cross. Maya had seen exactly one of those in person worn by a SEAL instructor during her advanced trauma training. The man had lost both legs earning it during a firefight in Iraq, had still managed to save 3 wounded teammates before evacuation arrived. "I don't deserve that, sir," Maya said quietly. "I was just doing my job." "Your job was to provide medical care," Vaughn interjected from his wheelchair. "You went about 15 steps beyond that, Doc." Richardson nodded. "Lieutenant Commander Vaughn is correct. However, there's another matter we need to discuss. Your psychological evaluation." Maya's stomach tightened. She'd known this was coming. You don't kill 50 people in one night without someone wanting to examine your mental state afterward. Standard protocol after any combat incident of this magnitude, Hayes explained, her tone gentler now. Especially for personnel who aren't primarily combat specialties. "We need to ensure you're processing what happened in a healthy way. And if I'm not, then we get you help. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. The Navy takes care of its own petty officer Hartwell. Always." The psychological evaluation began the next day. A Navy psychiatrist named Commander Lisa Torres sat across from Maya in a private consultation room. Her expression neutral and professional. "Tell me about the first person you killed," Torres said. Maya closed her eyes, remembering. 3 insurgents burst into the clinic. They were going for Lieutenant Commander Vaughn. I didn't think. I just raised my rifle and fired. Center mass, 3-round burst, exactly like they taught us in basic. How did you feel afterward? Shocked. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe I'd actually done it. Maya opened her eyes. But I didn't have time to process it. There were more coming, and my patients couldn't defend themselves. And the subsequent kills? How did those feel? Maya thought carefully before answering. Different. After the first 3, it became ... tactical. I wasn't thinking about them as people anymore. They were threats. Problems to solve. X number of hostiles in Y position, requiring Z amount of firepower to neutralize. You compartmentalized, Torres noted. I guess so. Is that bad? It's a survival mechanism. Common in high-stress combat situations. Torres made a note on her tablet. But now you're out of that situation. The immediate threat is gone. How are you processing it now? That was the harder question. Maya stared at her bandaged hands that had sutured wounds and administered medications and held dying Marines as they took their last breaths. Hands that had also pulled triggers and launched grenades and killed with clinical efficiency. I dream about them, she admitted. Not nightmares exactly, just ... moments. Faces in the smoke. Bodies falling. The smell of burning fuel and cordite. I wake up and for a second, I think I'm still there, still fighting. That's normal. Post-traumatic stress. Given what you experienced, it would be more concerning if you weren't having those reactions. Torres leaned forward slightly. Maya, can I call you Maya? Yes, ma'am. Maya, what you did wasn't murder. It was combat. Legal, justified, necessary combat to protect yourself and your patients. But I understand that intellectually knowing that and emotionally accepting it are two different things. I became a medic to save lives, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to be the person who put people back together, not the person who tears them apart. And now you're both, Torres finished. And reconciling those two identities is going to take time. But here's what I want you to understand. Being a healer doesn't mean being a pacifist. Sometimes protecting life requires taking life. That doesn't make you a killer. It makes you someone who was willing to do something impossibly hard to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. What if I can't go back to being just a medic? What if I can't look at patients without seeing targets? What if I've broken something in myself that can't be fixed? Torres reached across and gently touched Maya's uninjured hand. Then we'll work through it together. However long it takes. The Navy has excellent trauma counseling programs, peer support groups, long-term therapy options. You don't have to carry this alone. The door opened and a nurse poked her head in. Commander Torres? Sorry to interrupt, but Petty Officer Hartwell has visitors. They say it's important. Torres looked at Maya. Do you feel up to visitors? Maya nodded, wiping her eyes with her good hand. Yeah, who is it? The nurse smiled. All 5 of them. They came in one at a time: Vaughn in his wheelchair, Brennan on crutches, Keller with a drainage tube still visible under his hospital gown, Martinez and Chun both limping but mobile. 5 SEALs who by all rights should have been dead or in Taliban custody, now crowded into Maya's hospital room, looking uncomfortable and determined. Lieutenant Commander Vaughn spoke first. Doc, we wanted to come thank you properly. Not just for saving our lives, but for refusing to give up on us even when the smart play was to save yourself. Corporal Brennan held out a small package wrapped in plain paper. We got you something. Well, Vaughn got it. We all signed it though. Maya unwrapped the package with her good hand. Inside was a Navy SEAL trident, the distinctive gold pin that marked someone as a qualified special warfare operator. But this one was different. It had been mounted on a plaque, and underneath were 5 signatures along with an inscription. To HM2 Meyer Hartwell, Honorary, SEAL, earned through courage under fire and refusal to leave teammates behind. FOB Crimson, October 15, 2019. Brothers and sisters in arms forever. Maya stared at it, her vision blurring with tears she could no longer hold back. The SEAL trident wasn't something given lightly. Men spent years training to earn the right to wear it. And here were 5 of the most elite warriors in the world, telling her she'd earned that same right in a single night. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, Vaughn replied. We just wanted you to know that what you did mattered. Not just to us, but to our families, our teammates, everyone who cares about us. You gave us a future we wouldn't have had otherwise. Keller stepped forward, moving carefully around his medical equipment. My daughter was born 2 months ago. I got to meet her because of you. Got to hold her, see her smile, be her dad. That's everything, Doc. That's literally everything. Brennan nodded. My little girl, I told you about her, remember? She's 3 now. I'm going to get to see her grow up, teach her to ride a bike, walk her down the aisle someday. Because you wouldn't quit. One by one, each SEAL shared what Maya's actions had given back to them. Marriages that wouldn't end in widows' benefits. Children who would grow up with fathers. dreams and plans and futures that had been snatched from the edge of oblivion by one medic who refused to accept the impossible odds.